The time was that Elkanah offered to give to Peninnah, his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb, and her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so, year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Then said Elkanah, her husband, to her, Hannah, why weepest thou? And why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am I not better to thee than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest set up a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. Hannah, the ideal mother. I've simply read this for your consideration, and that we might, while we think on Mother's Day and its significance and what it means, that in these days when people are detouring from the path of the traditional pattern of motherhood, then possibly our thinking and our talking will influence us to reconsider our ways. A great deal of sentiment has been built around this day. A great many tributes are made to mothers. Since this day has been set apart by Congress as Mother's Day, of course, people are communicating and expressing their respects and their love and their appreciation for mothers in any number of different ways. By telegrams, by letters, by cards, by gifts, and by any number of ways to say, I appreciate my mother. I love and I respect my mother. Yesterday, I was in one of the cleaning places, and a young lady began talking to me about Mother's Day and told me that her mother had passed on. And she said, I wish she was here. I would do thus and so for her tomorrow. But among the many things I want you to remember on this Mother's Day is, let us not only have special Mother's Day. Let us let every day be Mother's Day. And to the young modern mothers, to the 20th century mothers, to the atomic age mothers. Let us remember that if you would have the eternal respect of your descendants, you must be deserving. For today, all mothers, I think, are not acting like mothers. You know, there are those who say that they do not believe in divorce. Be that as it may, it seems to me that that assumption is based on the idea that let that which God has joined together, let no man put it asunder. But you can't tell me, I don't believe that all the folk that are married today, God joined them together. As I have said before, people marry for too many different reasons. And some of those reasons are not good ones. And so I think that some people would be better off if they did not have children. At least I know the children would be better off. Are you praying with me? I think that a mother should follow a certain course of action, should possess a certain attitude toward her children. In the first place, a real mother should have some sense of what the idea of motherhood really means. It means a little more than to merely bear children. It means a little more than that. In the first place, the person who brings children into the world is highly honored. You are performing thereby a divine duty and responsibility. And no matter what your attitude may be about it, with the bringing forth of children come responsibility and obligation. Whether you like it or not, God has so endowed you and has enabled you to bring forth children into the world. And you become the steward, the God-appointed guardian over those children. You cannot always determine what they will do, but what you can do, you can try as best you know how to imbue into them certain ideas that will be guideposts and warnings and stops in their lives. Or to our dismay and to our utter regret, we are often grieved at the course that our children take. They take courses that we had hoped they would avoid. But even with that possibility and even with that respect or with that prospect, we are responsible to do the best we know how. What God expects us to do for our sons and our daughters. And there seems to be something close a little closer than father about mother. For you see, mother usually teach her children the first words that they utter. No wonder they call it the language that we speak, our mother tongue. Because usually we learn it from mother. The mother who believes in God not only teach her children the first utterances, the first audible and intelligible words that they speak, but she teaches them the first things that they know about God. That is, if she know anything about God. So that I think, and I would to God that it were left to me, I think that every mother ought to be a Christian. I don't think that a mother is really equipped, is really prepared to bring up children if she herself does not know God. I think that mothers figure too definitely in the ideas, in the outlook, and in the attitude, and in the disposition that her children possess to not first know God. And since she figure in the ideas, in the disposition, in the views, in the outlook, in the attitudes of her children, and since that person must grow up to mingle and associate and work with other folk, I think the person who courts them, those children in their plastic years, in their years in their what they call the impressionistic years, that person ought to know God. Pardon me for being personal and using myself as an example, but I'm saying this because it happened in my own experience. I learned how to pray from my mother. I never knew what prayer was until I learned it from her. And her faith in God was contagious for me. As I reflect back down the vista of the past today, as I think about all of the problems and all of the experiences that I have had through all of the years that I have lived, without a faith in God and without faith in prayer and without a disposition of loyalty to God, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I would have done without believing in prayer. Without believing in prayer. Without faith in God. And ultimately faith in myself. The trials and the tests and all of the responsibilities that I have gone through, I believe, would have shattered me had it not been for my faith in God and my faith in myself, which I inherited from my mother. I don't think I could have taken it. I don't think I could have taken it. Listen, if you please. Hannah, we have chosen as our model mother today, was one of those mothers who desired to be a mother. You know, we've become so modern today until it's a little old-fashioned to have children. In this society that Hannah lived, it was an honorable thing to have children. And every mother or every woman looked forward with desire and with respect toward the state of motherhood. She wanted a mother. The woman today who has more than one child or more than two children is very often the object of criticism and sometimes downright scorn. Say, honey, you know, she having too many children, she losing her shape. I'm using these terms to impress it upon your mind that these expressions are indicative of a deeper attitude and of an attitude toward family life that's undergoing basic changes. You see, there is immortality in your offspring. The immortality of the family, the constancy of the family was so important in Eastern and Oriental society that the idea of carrying on the family name and the family tradition was so important that if one brother died without having or bringing forth children to carry on his name, if he had other brothers, the next oldest brother must follow him into wedlock with the wife that he left behind in order that the family name would go on. It was so important. But today we have changed our attitude. Hannah, the model mother, had a desire for motherhood. And not only a desire, but prayed to God to bless her with the state of motherhood, to bestow upon her motherhood. It was customary that the petitions of the parishioners of the priest would take their petitions to the priest and tell him what their desires were. But Hannah deviated from the traditional approach and went up and prayed for herself. She didn't leave it to the priest. She went personally to God for what she wanted. And certainly, those of us who live in the Christian era believe in what Hannah did. For we believe in a personal approach to God. I don't believe you know what I'm talking about. We believe in going to God for ourselves. And I think every mother ought to be a praying mother. Not only look upon the state of motherhood with respect and view it honorably, but I think every mother ought to be a praying mother. It would be a wonderful thing in your home for your children to hear you pray sometime. You don't know the potency. You don't know the extent of the influence that it would have upon your child's life in his formative formative years for that child to hear you pray sometime. I never shall forget that when I was a child, that frequently I heard my mother pray. And the thing that impressed me most was that occasionally at night I have been awakened out of my sleep with tears from her eyes dropping in my face, saying, Lord, help me to rear my children. Help me to rear them as God-fearing children. And listen, to hear her telling God that for me, to hear her say, Lord, help me to rear them, and then help me to rear them as God-fearing children. Help me to keep them in a path that will give God glory. Went a long ways in my mind and toward influencing my disposition. You ought to let your children hear you talk to God for them sometime. Hannah was a praying mother. Not only did she have an esteemed respect for the state of motherhood, but she was a praying mother. Pray with me if you please. And then thirdly, and I'm going to be just about through when I say this. Thirdly, she rededicated her children to God. Can I tell you a bit more? That's personal and has to do with my own experience. Of course, the approach would probably be criticized today, but when I was a boy, my mother used to, on Sunday mornings, I didn't have any shoes to wear to Sunday school. She'd have me to grease my legs and walk proudly to the Sunday school. And you know, the Sunday school provided those little cards with pictures on them for the children. And she would take my sister and I over these cards several times. Read it, she would say. Or she'd read it for us and have us following her, reading it to us. And then after she'd gone over it several times with us, then she'd hand it to us and reach back and get a scrap and say, now you read it. You know, that gives you pretty good encouragement to read, doesn't it? Aside from that, I recall another thing. These things live with you. I remember one night in the graduation of the year, I guess from about 5th or 6th grade, my sister and I were on program to speak. And of course the kids were rather noisy, and I was rather afraid to stand up before an audience and speak. And this particular night, I stood up to speak, but I spoke so low that very few people heard me. When I finished speaking, I cast my eye around at my mother, and she looked at me a certain way, and I knew that I was in for it. She said, when she got home that night, the next time when I get through with you, the next time you get up on the stage to speak, you are going to speak. And believe it or not, I've been speaking ever since then. And I mean speaking where folk could hear me. Now, this is not an approach that child psychology would recommend in the upbringing of children. But I want to tell you, it certainly was an effective approach so far as I was concerned. And it certainly has done some positive things for me. Some positive things. Some things that have serviced me and have helped me through my life in the years that I have lived. So I'm trying to say to you, my brothers and my sisters, I think it is necessary that we rethink about the problem of bringing up our children. And that we would re-examine ourselves on shouldering the responsibilities that are imposed upon parents. And certainly mother has her place in this scheme of things. For you see, we are largely responsible for our children. We are largely responsible. The Lord gave them to us, and the Lord is counting on us to bring them up, to live that abundant life, and to make the world a better place in which to live. As you look at a baby crying in its mother's arms, as you look at that little span of humanity, the physical eye cannot analyze the possibilities that's within that child. The physical eye cannot see all the things that he is capable of doing, and what he will do, and what contribution he will make to world order and to human adjustment, as to what contribution he will make into making the world population a brotherhood and making world society the kingdom of God. Depends largely on mother as well as on father. My brothers and sisters, this is no small task. This is no small task. And this is no day and age when we should shun the responsibility imposed upon us as mothers and fathers. These are your children, and God gave them to you. I never shall forget that before I moved to this city, when I first took over the pastorate of this church, there were 3 little boys who were left at home one night alone. And I believe, if my memory served me right, they were left in a room where an old coal stove was to keep them warm. And about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, the house caught a fire, and the little children were suffocated, all 3 of them, before any help could reach them. And they had to go to the tavern somewhere at that hour in the morning and find that mother and tell her that her children were dead. For you see, this we could not say was the ideal mother. Pray with me if you please. I believe the little boys were about, 3, 4, and 5. Something around that age. Subject to wake up any time of night. Subject to need any kind of aid or any kind of help. Subject to wake up sick. And my brothers and my sisters, and sisters especially, it may be a little sacrificing to stand by your children and to do certain things. It might cause you a lot of trouble. It may put you to a number of inconveniences. But I want to tell you, if you'll stand by them, they never will forget you. And they'll rise up in their own time and call you blessings. Call you blessings. Or you may say to yourself, children today don't appreciate anything that you do for them. You may say that children are so wild and are so bad that they don't appreciate the sacrifices that I'm making for them. That I'm going to work and working long hours. I'm rising early in the morning and they don't realize what I'm doing. And that girl that I deny myself for to let her look all right. Why, she doesn't have time to do anything. Her mind is on folly and on pleasure. But I want to tell you, the time will come when her mind will change and her whole attitude will change. The time will come when she'll look back on your sacrifices. And the time will come when she'll look back on the trouble that you had. And will say, I don't see how she stood it all. And I don't see how she was able to go through with all the trouble that I gave her. And I want to say this other thing to you is that I believe when you reach old age, I wish somebody would pray with me. And when your head have begun blooming for the grave, when you reach that age when life has purged your mind of folly, and time has settled your mind and your attitude as well as your body down. And I believe it's a wonderful thing to have a son or a daughter to say to you, mother, I still love you, for you stood by me. And I appreciate all the things that you did for me. In my coming up, maybe I acted like I didn't appreciate it, but it was only because I didn't understand you then. But now I know what you were trying to do. And I want you to remember the time that you put in is not lost. It may take a little time for them to see what you are after. And it may take a little time for them to understand what you were trying to do. But I know from my own experience, and I know from my broad contacts, and I know from the thousands of children that I've talked to in my life, those who were brought up properly still hold on to it and look back on their parents with reverence and respect. Holy God, occasionally they may go wild and they may go astray. As I remember having heard a story of a young woman whose eyes caught the light of the world and who was bewitched and allured by the bright lights of the night and looked on old mother as foggy and old-timey and got with the fast crowd and turned from her upbringing. When mother talked to her and prayed with her and pleaded with her, she became so tired until eventually she left town and said, I'm going to leave here, for I can't have any fun without mother bothering with me all the time and criticizing me all the time. And that young lady went to a distant city and got with the fast crowd. Eventually she lost her health and went to the tuberculosis asylum. She lay there with her body wasting away and her lungs deteriorating. Oh Lord, as she lay there her whole life like a panorama came before her. It came to her how difficult she'd been and how hard she had been and how prone she was to go wrong. Oh Lord, it came to her that mother after all knew what she was talking about. Maybe what she said did not spark her into wild, ardent living, Oh, Lord. But Mama knew what all this would come to. Oh, Lord. Yeah. She'd been in town several years. She had not been so nice as to write Mother and tell her where she was. Or give her address. And as she lay there on the bed, great God, she said, I would like to write her and let her know what has happened to me. Oh, Lord. But I've been so bad, and I've gone along so long without dropping a line. Oh, Lord. I don't believe, I feel ashamed of myself to get out on a sick bed and then write her. All the years of my health and my youth when I was running around, I didn't have time to write her. The crowds were carrying me too fast, and too many things were going on for me to take time to write her. Oh, Lord. But then the end seemed to have been coming. Great God Almighty. She said to a friend, it doesn't seem that I'll be here much longer. Oh, I know I've been wrong. Would you come down to the hospital and sit down by my bed and write and tell her, let me tell her before I go that now I appreciate and now I understand. Oh, Lord, I don't want to lay down and die without letting her know that I learned that she was right. Oh, Lord. And when that mother got the letter, and she read down along the lines about the condition of her child, tears began to roll down her eyes, and she began thinking in terms of how I can get there and get her and bring her home. And if the Lord want to take her, let him take her from home. Oh, Lord. And she walked in that hospital with tears streaming down. Said, daughter, I'm not thinking about what you did. You were a child. You were just young and didn't know any better. Oh, Lord. I'm trying to make arrangements to take you on back home. I know that you were a little wise. Yes, I do. I know that you didn't headstrong, but you were still my child. Oh, Lord, I have the experience that mother had, and you didn't know what you were getting into. Oh, come on, go home with me, and I'm going to stick by you. Every day and every night I'm going to pray for you. Oh, Lord, I nurse that girl back to health. Let me tell you, it may not be the thing that you want to do, but you better have ears and hear somebody that knows something that you haven't learned yet. Isn't it so? Thank God for mine who told me that the Lord is a door when every other door is closed. That the Lord, the Lord, the Lord is a way out of no way. There is no way. Thank God for learning that. And thank God for learning it early. Thank God it has stood by me and has borne me over many a flood. Thank God it has been a guiding light in my otherwise dark life. Thank God it has been an arrow of direction when I would have otherwise been confused. God bless you. And I want you to pray. And I want you to hold your position. I want you to pray. Please don't walk during the invitation.